We've been hearing from the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez this morning in reaction to Trump's threats to effectively create a trade embargo on Spanish products because of lack of access to Spanish military bases amid the Iran conflict. Now, Sanchez is saying we in Spain are against this disaster. This is how humanity's great disasters start. Cannot play Russian roulette with the destiny of millions. We will collaborate with countries in the region working for peace with diplomatic and material resources. The war in Iran won't lead to a more just international order, higher salaries, better public services, or healthier environments. Again, talking about some of the other challenges away from war and saying that the Iraq war led to a more insecure world. So he's, again, raking back over other wars in the region and what the consequences have been. Charlotte, weigh in on this.
Yes, I was just listening to Pedro Sánchez, who finished speaking about just a few minutes ago, and he said, in summary, to sum up the Spanish government's position is no a la guerra, no to war. And he said that Spain won't repeat the mistakes of the past. They're talking about the war in Iraq and the Tree of the Azores. Of course, you remember the time you had Bush, Aznar and Blair leading the effort there in the war of Iraq. They said Spain won't repeat the mistakes of the past. He also said in this statement that we don't know how this will end, and that includes those who started it. So they're an indirect criticism to Donald Trump, who was not named at all in the statement there. He said that the leaders who hide their failures to improve instead of improving the lives of their citizens behind the smoke of their bombs. And he said that there's a problem when the leaders stop to build hospitals to build missiles. So, you know, here again, this kind of comments that we heard. He said you can't respond to illegality with another illegality, and that you can't play Russian roulette with the destiny of millions, and that they have to act and find diplomatic solutions before this gets out of hand. And finally, just to note there, he said that he won't be an accomplice to what is bad for the world and against the Spanish values, and they won't comply, even when there are threats of retaliation from some. So that's the only mention there. That was after what we heard from President Trump yesterday of potential trade embargo against Spain. So here, this comment's pretty solid there for Pedro Sánchez, sticking to his gun, again saying that they are in favor of international law and they won't comply in a war that is not in the frame of the international law. So here again, we know it's been multiple spats between the US and Spain. Certainly Pedro Sánchez being the most vocal and the most critical against Donald Trump, and that's been on different fronts. Spain said they will not increase their spending and the contribution to NATO to 5%. They said they will stick to 2%, and that kind of
well, they haven't even got to 2%.
That was the target for last year.
Charlotte, if I put in the following sentence, man who is under pressure domestically resorts to foreign policy initiatives or statements to get himself out of a mess. One could be talking about Starmer, Macron, maybe even Trump and Sanchez, who knows? But I'll leave that question aside. I think Sanchez would have a lot more credibility if indeed he had got to that 5%. He's part of a club. You can either be in the club or not be in the club, like the British with Brexit as well. They made the decision, for right or for wrong, they got out of the club. If Sanchez wants to be in the NATO club, if any of these European countries want to be, they've got to put up or shut up. They've got to put up the money as well. And I understand the Spanish argument about social spending, but the fact of the matter is every other single nation, from the Canadians to the Italians to the Turks, of course to the Brits as well and others, have said, OK, we haven't spent enough, we'll get to 5%. Sanchez hasn't got a leg to stand on if he's not prepared to defend Spain militarily and rely on others to do so.
Especially when the Spanish economy has been doing so well. So what is the argument to not contribute at the same level as the others? To be fair to Pedro Sánchez, he's in line with his public opinion. His public opinion is supporting him on that front, is supporting him in criticizing Donald Trump, and he's a man who wants to run an election next year, and he's certainly carrying the voice and the opinions of his people.
Sure, we all want to build hospitals rather than spend it on tanks, but the fact of the matter is, if we don't want to be speaking Russian in 25 years' time, or our kids to be speaking Russian, we need to spend the money on those preemptive weapon systems, don't we?
Yeah, I guess the argument from the Spanish is that the European model that needs to be defended is also its social model, and that is when there's austerity that this model collapses from inside as well. So they say we have to invest in this as well to support and make...
Try telling the Soviet bloc or Prague 68 or the Hungarians in the... Try telling them about social models when the Russian tanks are rolling through. I'm sorry, it just seems that Spain seems quite a way away from the eastern or northern flanks, so hence they have a very different attitude.